what are the decisions I'm making without thinking about them?
Mm-hmm.
Is this actually what I want? Or is this the only thing I think is available?
So today I get to talk with Aaron, who is an architect, and he has been working in that space. He'll share a little bit more about that. My work with simplifywork.io is to help people find those core principles and the way to just remove the burden that we always feel with all the work, the life work that happens. And I had this thought as I was actually talking to my wife, and this concept of there are principles that drive everything, like the law of gravity. Like you can't really fight gravity. I like houses, I like architecture. I wonder, what are some of the principles that would be found in architecture? So I thought of connecting with you. So if you could share just a little bit about yourself, architecture, and then we'll have some questions to dive in.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kevin. My name's Aaron Henderson. I founded Sovereign Architecture 7 years ago. I've been an architect for the last 20 years, and let's see.
Yeah, great. When you begin designing anything, what are some of the first questions you ask and why?
The fundamental thing for designing anything for me always starts off with what's the point?
Okay.
Why are we doing this? Whether it's a house or a business, or really that covers basically everything.
But the question why is so crucial.
They wind up with a house that would suit anyone reasonably. If you're going to the trouble and the expense of building something for you,
Mm,
don't start off not paying attention to why we're doing it.
okay. Okay. I mean, that plays into so many things. Like you could just go buy an off the shelf software product. What are some other areas that you would say that that concept applies to in like life?
If you go through life and you follow the recipe on the box, millennials and everybody
Mm-hmm.
younger than that has sort of had the realization, and it's not absolute truth, but the concept of what if we didn't do that? What if we did
Yeah.
something else?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Why would you spend the extra money to do this custom thing that's the same as something you could just buy from the store, in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
or buy another house that's already been built? So, how, like, what other areas of life would you say that applies to?
I would say life in general, to be honest,
Okay.
where if you go through life and all you do is you follow the directions on the box
Oh,
of,
yeah.
go to school, go to college, get married, get a good job, contribute to your 401k, follow all the steps, and eventually, hopefully before you die, you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor. That's the baby boomer formula.
Yeah.
And millennials, everybody younger has sort of realized
Mm,
that's not the only way
yeah.
to go through life. And there's a whole lot of deferred gratification
Okay.
that isn't necessarily required to be a responsible adult. If we zoom back far enough to go, well, why? Why am I here? Why do I want to get that job? Why do I want to live in this place?
Mm,
If we zoom back to our fundamental motivations about
yeah.
things, we can realize that, oh, I don't actually want that.
Yeah.
I want this thing that I don't think I can have, but I'm going to settle for that other thing because I think it's available.
Settling for what's available. Oh man, there's so much. I so one years ago, I was sitting at my parents' couch, and I remember connecting something that concept to the prodigal son. So in scripture, the prodigal son comes to the father and says, "Hey, I want my share of the inheritance." There's so much to that story. Like, look it up if you don't know it. But one thing that kind of gave me the aha related to that is the son was settling for whatever the father had at that time, not what would continue to grow with the business and everything over time. There are so many other negatives to that, but settling, like we often settle just because it's convenient. We think it's the only thing that's in front of us, and that can lead to a lot of disappointment that we don't realize because we didn't maybe ask the question why or step back and really assess the need. And one thing you mentioned at the beginning, what was it, live?
Work, play.
Say a little more about how you use that to guide an architectural design.
The way that I use those three principles, live, work, and play, is that it basically encompasses all of the different areas of the standard lived experience. They
Yeah.
fall into one of those three silos,
Yeah.
and so it's sort of the catch-all of every part of your life fits in there. It's not, oh well, I want somewhere that I can work from, but I'm not going to live there or play there. Well, okay, you've described an office, and okay, we can do that. working in the custom home space, usually for most people, there's a fusion of all three of those things.
Yeah,
And
especially in today's culture.
exactly, yeah, work from home,
Yeah.
solopreneur, entrepreneur, all of those things where it's probably it's not very likely that you are going to leave your home where you live and work in a completely different place that is entirely separate 100% of the time permanently.
Yeah.
Some people do that, but you're either bringing work home with you or you are working from a coffee shop or your house or
Yeah.
wherever you want. And all the different areas of life flow together far more than they did even 10 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot to that. And like if we could structure our house around live, work, play, then that creates like what would you say, how does that affect people beyond just the physical side? Like would you say there's emotional value? Like what are some of the other benefits of designing like that?
Absolutely. One of I would say the fundamental benefit is designing a physical space that automatically tips the balance
Mm.
for you for having an unusually healthy work life balance.
Ooh, I like that. An
So,
unusually healthy work-life balance because so many people have an unhealthy work-life balance.
and it's just the default of, oh, well, I have to work, I have to do these things, and everything sort of flows together until there's no boundaries, there's no delineation. You're answering emails at 11:30 at night, and it's not all a space problem. A lot of it is a
Mm,
conscious choice lifestyle problem. But
yeah.
if you have a home, if you have a place that automatically fosters
Hmm.
having healthy boundaries between the different areas of your life, it's a whole lot easier to implement the interchanges that you need to do that.
Yeah. No, I love that because in today's society, I mean, I would say it is a privilege to work from home, but it's also there are some negatives that come with that.
Mhm.
And so to design your house to be conducive to those challenges, to avoid them, just provides this level of presence that you can put off what might pull you in if you aren't intentional
Mhm.
with that. Okay, so in architecture, it seems like all of the designs happen well before building. That's what it should be, right?
They'd better.
But there's often, I believe, small things that maybe even are hidden. I'm thinking of like footers. I'm thinking of like beams, all these things you don't see, but like if you don't plan them accordingly, it is a pain to change after the fact, a
Mhm.
change order. So, how do you help people see maybe the unseen things that they're not considering and help them process how that affects the design, the build, and the structure?
That's you've picked up on a truism that the things you can't see are often the most important things to deal with first. Basically, the foundational principles for anything you're doing, just like a house, are necessary to be figured out and decided on and committed to
Hmm.
before you start seeing all of the cool stuff coming up into the air.
Okay.
So many people got 1, 2, 3, 4 years into a college degree
Hmm.
and realized either I don't know what I want to do, or this thing I thought that I wanted to do, I actually hate it.
Yeah, we need to be intentional with why am I doing this task?
Mhm.
Why am I putting this thing together, this house, this business, whatever it is?
What are the decisions I'm making without thinking about them?
Hmm. Yeah,
And hold them up and look at them and go, is this actually what I want? Or
yeah.
is this the only thing I think is available?
So there's all these constraints that could prevent some people from doing certain things. There's probably logical reasons behind that. But as you think about factoring in the constraints of designing a house, what's the most surprising thing that constraints has taught you in the planning process?
That's a great question. The thing that designing with constraints and limitations has taught me is that they are absolutely necessary, and counterintuitively, they're a good thing instead of a bad thing.
Okay.
And constraints in terms of building, design, and construction usually come in I would say, four different flavors.
Okay.
You have budget. There are always practical constraints in terms of where you're building, what you're building, things like that. There are time constraints. And then there are what I would call legal constraints where codes come in, requirements, things that are not necessarily things that may seem less relevant than the other three categories, but are still nonetheless constraints and limitations that need to be worked with and not ignored.
Yeah. So in a sense, constraints create creativity, and that creates beauty.
Mm-hmm. Constraints demand creativity,
Yeah,
and
I
the
like it.
creativity is what the unique product comes out of.
So rather than seeing a constraint as a obstacle, seeing it as a design aesthetic. So one of the concepts that I teach, I don't know if you want to call it that, is this idea is that life is about angles, and that if you change your angle, you can change your outcome. And that fits into this because, well, okay, so here's a picture. So like a square has four corners that are each 90 degrees. But if you change one of those corners smaller, then it actually has to affect at least two other corners. And so now you don't have a square. And so you change the angle, you change the shape in that case. So a constraint, oftentimes people will see a constraint at, oh, that hinders me. That's a burden. I have to like, ugh. But if we change the angle, we see it from a different vantage point. Oh wow, this is creativity. How have you used constraints and like repositioned it for customers? Do you have an example, a story?
Yes, I did a custom home for a family where they had a very unique site. The constraints were when we got the geotechnical engineer out to start looking at, oh, what are we putting this house on top of? And engineers can be notoriously matter of fact about things. And he said, well, we're just going to have to dig and see what we find. And we might find gravel, we might find dirt, we might find a boulder the size of a Buick. And we just have to keep digging until we get to something we want to put the house on.
Wow.
That was a serious constraint because when you say keep digging until we find something we want to put a house on, you see zeros starting to stack up.
Yeah.
And that turned out to be a constraint that
Mm.
guided us to putting the house in a different area of the
Okay.
site. Would it have been a really cool place to put a house? Yes, but the budget constraint
Mm.
and the geology constraint all of a sudden weren't lining up with each
Yeah.
other. So one constraint affected the other,
Yeah.
and we wound up putting the house on the top of the escarpment. Totally different view because all of a sudden the house was up in the trees. And instead of
Cool.
having the view of a rock outcropping, you have the view of 40 feet up in the canopy of a
Oh,
forest.
that's
It was
cool.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Either one would have been a good option, but those constraints put that house in a place that
Mm.
it wouldn't have been otherwise.
I love it. Yeah.
The idea of constraints I really equate to when you're pouring concrete.
Okay.
What shape is concrete?
Shape while it's wet, the shape of the bucket. When it's dry, the shape of the form.
Exactly. Life and houses and everything, they're like concrete.
Okay.
Until you start putting constraints around them, it's the
Hmm.
shape of nothing.
Yeah.
You pour concrete without formwork, you get an amorphous pile of something that then cures into being utterly useless.
Yes.
In order to have concrete do something useful, first you have to build constraints to
Mm.
pour it into,
Yeah.
and then it can do the thing that you want.
That's
But if you
good.
say, oh, I want a foundation, but I don't want any constraints, what do you wind up with? You don't
Mhm.
wind up with a foundation, you wind up with a useless pile of concrete.
Oh man, that plays into life. So this past summer, so our kids are in public school right now, and they were on summer break, and we tried the route of unstructured for the summer. It
Mhm.
was a really hard summer. There were no constraints, and our kids coming out of a very structured space of school, coming into this freedom. Like there were times when we didn't, as parents, know what we wanted. How do we set our schedule? They're fighting our schedule because they have no boundaries, they have no
Mhm.
guide. And so to have constraints can be really helpful, especially when multiple people are involved.
Even just the simple guideline of go outside until lunch
Yeah,
can be enough of a springboard to go, okay, I have to be outside. What can I do out here?
yeah, exactly. So some kind of boundary, and I believe too many people in our culture like don't put constraints on me, but it's like they're not bad. They actually constraints can be a blessing.
The more you fight the constraints you have, the stricter constraints will be put upon you. Look
Oh
at
yeah,
life, a life of crime. The more you fight the laws of the society you're in, the more of your freedom will be taken away.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so kind of just wrapping up, what would you say are maybe 5 things for people to, let's say, avoid when they think about designing any aspect of life, work, or play?
Mm. I would say I will offer one.
Okay, one thing to avoid while designing. What is it?
I would say designing anything, your house, your life, your vacation,
Mm.
anything. The one thing I would say that needs to be avoided is assumptions.
Ooh.
Designing is this beautiful process where you actually have absolute total freedom over something that has yet to be brought into existence. Be it your lifestyle or your house or your vacation or your grocery list,
Mm.
you have complete freedom when something is in the idea phase.
Okay. So if we can avoid our assumptions, then we can build in freedom a life, a work, a hobby that we enjoy, that doesn't drain us and suck the life out of us.
That is designed specifically for you and your
Mm.
family. My website is sav-arc.com.
Okay.
I do residential and commercial design.
Okay.
I've
Cool.
I've done custom homes in multiple different states. I've
Yeah.
done commercial projects. I enjoy the variety
Okay.
and the challenges of something unique
I
that
love it.
isn't obvious and straightforward.
Okay. Yeah. Sav-arc.com. Um, awesome. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks, Kevin.